Let's get right into it. Number 12. Dozens of strangers touched your lunch. Picture your meal from this afternoon. Maybe it was a sandwich, a bowl of rice, a sad desk salad, whatever it was, you ate it assuming it was basically yours. A private little transaction between you and a kitchen. Adorable. Here's the reality. By the time food reaches your mouth, it has passed through an almost comical number of human hands. There's the farm worker who harvested it, the sorter who graded it, the truck driver who hauled it in 40-degree heat, the warehouse crew, the grocery stock person, the person who squeezed it to check if it was ripe and then put it back, and finally you, who also didn't wash your hands quite as thoroughly as you told yourself you did. The USDA estimates that produce alone changes hands an average of 5 to 7 times between farm and fork. And that's before we get to the restaurant kitchen, where your food was handled by multiple prep cooks, plated by someone with a minor cut on their finger, and slid across a counter that was last sanitized recently-ish. The psychological phenomenon here is called the disgust threshold. Basically, your brain has decided it's okay to eat food touched by strangers as long as you didn't watch it happen. The moment you see someone sneeze near your food, you're done. But the invisible history of 100 prior hands? Your brain waves it through like airport security at 5 a.m. It simply doesn't process what it can't see. Your disgust response is entirely visual and entirely embarrassingly gameable. The science calls this out-of-sight, out-of-mind contamination tolerance. Researchers at Cornell found that people rated food as equally appetizing whether it came from a stranger or a close friend, as long as they didn't see the transfer. In other words, your immune system is doing a lot of heavy lifting your brain refuses to acknowledge. Basically, the only reason you're not horrified every time you eat is because evolution decided ignorance was more efficient than starvation. You're welcome for ruining your next meal. Number 11. The expiration date is largely fiction. Somewhere in your kitchen right now, there is a carton of something. Milk, eggs, yogurt, leftovers in a container that you're optimistically calling still fine. And on that carton or lid, there is a date stamped in authoritative black ink that your entire food safety worldview is built around. That date was mostly made up. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In the United States, there is no federal law, none, requiring most food manufacturers to put any expiration date on their products at all, except for infant formula. Everything else is voluntary, and manufacturers know this, so they use it. Best by, sell by, use by, and best before all means slightly different things, and none of them are regulated in any consistent scientific way. They are educated guesses, sometimes conservative estimates designed to protect the brand from complaints, and occasionally just vibes from a product manager in a meeting room in New Jersey. The USDA's own research suggests that up to 30% of the food supply in the US is wasted because consumers throw out food that is perfectly safe to eat, directly because of date label confusion. 30%. Gone. Not because it went bad, because someone read "sell by June 3rd" on June 5th and panicked. Your brain treats the expiration date as objective truth because it's printed by authority figures on a package. This is called source credibility bias. Your brain assigns reliability based on who said something, not whether it's actually true. If it's printed on packaging with a logo, it must be official. Meanwhile, the person who printed it was optimizing for shelf returns, not your pantry. Your nose and your eyes are actually better at detecting spoilage than most of those dates. You just don't trust them because there's no font on your nose. Number 10. Your natural food contains government-approved bug parts. The word natural on a food label is doing a lot of work. Heroic work, really. Standing there in clean green font, implying meadows and sunlight and zero insects. It is a beautiful lie. The FDA, the actual Food and Drug Administration, the people whose entire job is food safety, publishes a document called the Defect Levels Handbook. It is one of the most casually disturbing documents in American bureaucracy, and it is completely publicly available, which tells you everything about how good humans are at not looking things up. This handbook outlines the maximum allowable levels of natural or unavoidable defects in food products. Defects, as in the amount of bug pieces, rodent hairs, and mold your food is legally allowed to contain before the FDA considers it a problem. Peanut butter? Up to 30 insect fragments per 100 grams. Tomato sauce? up to 30 fly eggs per 100 grams. Paprika, up to 75 insect fragments per 25 grams. Chocolate, your beloved, romantic, gift-wrapped chocolate, is allowed up to 60 insect fragments per 100 grams. The FDA considers this aesthetically objectionable but not hazardous. A government agency looked at 60 bug pieces in your chocolate bar and said, fine, technically. The psychological trick your brain plays here is called benign masochism. Humans actually enjoy mildly disgusting experiences once they're reframed as harmless. Roller coasters, horror movies, spicy food, bug chocolate. Once your brain decides something won't kill you, it files it under adventure rather than threat. The disgust fades. The snacking continues. Also, and this is important, entomologists will point out that insects are high in protein and largely harmless. Your body has been eating them your whole life without a single complaint. It's only your brain that has the problem. Your stomach? Totally unbothered. Professionally indifferent. Number 9. Ultra-processed food was engineered to break your brain. Here is a fact that sounds like a conspiracy theory but is extensively documented in food science literature. The snack you reached for this afternoon was designed in a lab by people whose explicit goal was to make it impossible to stop eating. The term is hyperpalatable food, and it's a legitimate area of research. Scientists at major food companies, and yes, the research has leaked out in lawsuits and former employee memoirs, have spent decades identifying what's called the bliss point. That's the precise ratio of sugar, salt, and fat that sends your brain's reward circuitry into a feedback loop it literally cannot regulate normally. Not, it's hard to stop. Cannot stop. The dopamine hit from hyperpalatable food activates the same neural pathways as addictive substances. Your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part in charge of, maybe that's enough chips, gets functionally overridden by your nucleus accumbens, which is basically a golden retriever who just found a treat bag. This isn't accidental. It's a product of the sensory-specific satiety phenomenon. Your brain gets bored of one overwhelming flavor and stops wanting it. So food engineers design flavors that are complex enough to dodge satiety signals entirely. Cheetos don't taste like anything that exists in nature, which means your brain never gets the signal that you've eaten enough of that thing. Because there is no reference point. You've never eaten that thing before. Technically, biologically. Former Kraft and Frito-Lay scientists have testified that internal documents explicitly targeted this vulnerability. The goal wasn't nutrition. The goal wasn't even taste exactly. The goal was continuation. The product is not the snack. The product is the next handful. Your willpower isn't weak. Your willpower was in a fair fight until the lab coats showed up. Number 8. Stress literally changes how your body processes food. Imagine two people eating the exact same meal. Same calories, same macros, same restaurant, same table. One of them had a normal morning. The other had a nightmare commute, a hostile email from their boss, and a parking ticket. These two people will not metabolize that meal the same way. Not even close. This is not motivational poster territory. This is documented endocrinology. When your body is under stress, it releases cortisol, your primary stress hormone, which directly interferes with insulin sensitivity, gut motility, and the composition of your microbiome. Under chronic stress, your body preferentially stores calories as fat, particularly around the abdomen, because your ancient threat response system thinks you're about to need emergency fuel reserves for a physical crisis. Which you're not. You're replying to a Slack message. But your adrenal glands don't know that. A landmark 2014 study published in the journal Biological Psychiatry found that women who reported one or more stressors in the previous 24 hours burned 104 fewer calories after eating a high-fat meal than unstressed women. Over a year, that difference alone, without changing anything else, could result in 11 pounds of additional weight gain. From stress. Not from the food. From the context of eating the food. Your gut also has its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain, with more than 100 million neurons lining your digestive tract. This system talks directly to your brain via the vagus nerve, which means your emotional state isn't just affecting how you feel about your meal. It's affecting how your intestines physically process it. Stress slows digestion. It alters gut bacteria. It changes absorption rates. Basically, your body is a mood ring that also controls your metabolism. And society decided the correct response to this was to tell people to just eat healthy and call it a day. Number 7. Your food was probably older than you think. Fresh is a feeling, not a fact. And the food industry has gotten extraordinarily good at manufacturing the feeling. That apple you ate today, crisp, shiny, satisfyingly firm, may have been harvested 14 months ago. This is not an exaggeration. Apples are routinely stored in what's called controlled atmosphere storage, sealed chambers where oxygen is reduced to about 2% and carbon dioxide is elevated, essentially pausing the apple's biological clock like a fruit version of cryosleep. This technology has existed since the 1950s and is standard practice across commercial orchards worldwide. The apple does not rot. It does not ripen further. It just waits for up to a year, sometimes longer. Then it gets waxed, yes, coated in an edible wax to restore the shine that storage strips away, and shipped to your grocery store's fresh produce section. Meat has its own version of this. Vacuum-sealed beef can be wet-aged in its own juices for up to 40 days before hitting the butcher counter. Fish on a supermarket display can be up to 2 weeks old, packed in modified atmosphere packaging that replaces oxygen with carbon dioxide and nitrogen to preserve color and delay the smell your nose would otherwise use to correctly identify the situation. The psychology at play is called fresh cue reliance. Humans judge food freshness almost entirely by visual and tactile signals. Bright color, firm texture, glossy surface. We don't actually have reliable biological tools for detecting food age, only food spoilage. These are different things. Age doesn't necessarily mean danger, but your brain conflates the two, which means that as long as the wax is shiny and the packaging says, fresh, your threat detection system cheerfully stands down. The food industry didn't deceive you exactly. They just understood your brain better than you do and dressed the product accordingly. Technically, everyone behaved within the rules. The apple just had a very long gap year. Number 6. Artificial flavors are doing almost all the work. Here is a quick experiment. Close your eyes and imagine the taste of strawberry. That specific, bright, almost aggressively fruity flavor. Now consider, when did you last eat an actual strawberry that tasted like that? Real strawberries taste nothing like strawberry flavor. Real strawberries taste subtle, slightly grassy, occasionally tart, and wildly inconsistent depending on variety, season, and soil. The vivid, neon, cartoon version of strawberry that lives in your yogurt, your candy, your protein shake, and your children's cereal? That's a chemical construction. It's typically built from ethyl methylphenylglycidate and a rotating cast of other esters and aldehydes that exist nowhere in nature but smell, to your olfactory system, like a strawberry's aspirational self-image. The entire artificial flavor industry is built on a neurological exploit. Your sense of taste is actually mostly smell. Roughly 80 to 90% of what you perceive as flavor comes from aroma compounds detected by your olfactory receptors, not your taste buds. Your tongue can only detect 5 things: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami. Everything else is your nose doing the storytelling. Flavor chemists, called flavorists, are essentially professional nose hackers. Their job is to reverse engineer the aroma compounds that trigger specific flavor memories and then synthesize them cheaply, consistently, and at industrial scale. The result is that you have spent your entire life building flavor memories and emotional associations. Comfort, nostalgia, joy around chemical simulations. The mac and cheese your brain files under childhood was powered by natural and artificial cheese flavor, a substance that contains no cheese in any meaningful percentage. Your brain built a cathedral of feeling around a molecule. This isn't even necessarily bad for you. It's just that the thing you think you love, the specific sensory experience your whole body sometimes craves, doesn't entirely exist in the physical world. It mostly exists in a lab in New Jersey. Again, New Jersey. Number 5, you probably ate microplastics today. Definitely. Not maybe. Not research suggests. Definitely. The scientific consensus, as of the past several years of accumulating data, is that humans ingest an estimated 5 grams of microplastic particles per week, roughly the weight of a credit card, through food, water, and air. Per week. Every week. Microplastics have been found in honey, in sea salt, in tap water, in bottled water, in beer, in produce, in fish, in chicken, in human blood, in human lung tissue, in human placentas. A 2024 study found microplastic particles in the arterial plaque of cardiovascular patients, and those patients had a significantly higher rate of heart attack and stroke. Researchers are careful not to claim direct causation yet. The science is still developing, but the particles are there, inside the arteries, inside the organs, having arrived through the food supply. The plastics enter the chain at almost every stage. Plastic packaging leaches particles into food, especially under heat. Agricultural plastic films fragment into soil. Microbads from personal care products entered waterways for decades before being banned in many countries. But the ones already there aren't leaving. Sea life ingests them. You eat the sea life. And because plastic does not biodegrade, only photodegrades into smaller and smaller pieces, there is no version of this story where the particles go away on their own. The disturbing psychological layer is that there is essentially nothing you can do about this individually. Choosing organic doesn't solve it. Organic farms use water and air too. Choosing glass packaging helps somewhat but doesn't eliminate atmospheric exposure. Your body has been quietly accumulating something that didn't exist as a widespread contaminant 60 years ago, and there is no opt-out button. Your disgust response, which evolved to protect you from bad food, has no mechanism for detecting a particle measured in microns. You are, at this moment, part plastic. A small percentage, yes, but non-zero, probably increasing. Your great-grandparents were not. Make of that what you will. Number 4. Your brain decides if food tastes good before you eat it. Blind taste tests are one of the most reliably humbling experiments in food psychology, because they keep proving the same uncomfortable thing. You cannot taste with your eyes, and yet you absolutely do. In one of the most famous examples, wine experts, trained, credentialed, professionally opinionated wine experts, were given white wine secretly dyed red and described it using red wine vocabulary. Tannic, robust, notes of dark cherry. It was white wine, with food coloring. Their taste buds told them one thing. Their eyes screamed louder. The eyes won, decisively, and nobody in the room noticed they'd lost. This is called expectation-driven perception, and it runs your entire relationship with food. Your brain processes visual information and prior associations before the first bite ever happens, and it preloads a flavor prediction. Then, this is the part that should bother you, it subtly edits your actual taste experience to match the prediction. You don't just expect the food to taste a certain way. You taste it that way. The prediction becomes the experience. This is why food served on a white plate tastes cleaner and more refined than the same food on a black plate. Why drinks from heavier cups taste higher quality. Why food described with elaborate menu language, slow-braised heritage pork belly with a reduction of locally sourced blackberries, tastes measurably better than pork with berry sauce to the same people eating the same dish. The words flavor the food. The plate flavors the food. The lighting flavors the food. Your tongue is the last thing that gets a vote, and it's been consistently outvoted by your eyeballs, your memories, and whoever wrote the menu description. You have never tasted food objectively in your entire life. Every meal has been filtered through a layer of assumption, expectation, and context that was assembled before the fork even moved. Your taste buds are just there for legal reasons at this point. Number 3. Hunger isn't telling you what you think it's telling you. You've felt hungry before. Of course you have. That hollow, insistent, slightly annoying signal that tells you it's time to eat. You probably assume it means your body needs fuel. Sometimes it does. Often it means something else entirely, and your brain is not going to tell you which one it is. Hunger signals are generated by a complex orchestra of hormones, primarily ghrelin, which spikes on a schedule your body learned from your own eating habits, not from your actual caloric needs. If you eat lunch at noon every day, your body will generate a ghrelin spike at noon regardless of whether you had a massive breakfast at 11:30. Your body learned the pattern and automated the signal. The hunger you feel is partly a clock alarm your own behavior programmed. Thirst is also routinely misread as hunger. Research consistently shows that people who feel hungry between meals are frequently mildly dehydrated, and a glass of water resolves the signal. Your hypothalamus processes thirst and hunger in adjacent regions, and the signals bleed into each other with surprising regularity. Your body knows something is needed. It is less reliable about specifying what. Boredom, anxiety, and emotional distress trigger appetite signals that are neurologically nearly identical to actual physical hunger. The dopamine deficit from boredom mimics the dopamine reward loop of eating, so your brain, efficiency-obsessed as always, points you toward the fridge as a solution to a problem that has nothing to do with calories. Emotional eating isn't a character flaw. It's a wiring overlap that evolution never bothered to fix because, for most of human history, food scarcity meant eating whenever possible was the correct instinct. So the next time you feel hungry 2 hours after a full meal, the honest answer is, something is happening and food is one of the available responses, but probably not the most accurate one. Your body is sending a signal. The translation is just genuinely, frustratingly unreliable. Number 2. Food companies legally don't have to tell you everything. You read the label. You checked the ingredients. You made an informed decision. This is the story you told yourself, and it is partially, technically, selectively true. Food labeling laws contain a category that should be stapled to the forehead of every person who believes they know what they're eating: the incidental additive exemption. Under FDA regulations, ingredients that are present in a food in insignificant amounts and have no functional effect in the final product do not have to be declared on the label. Preservatives used on individual ingredients before they're combined. Processing aids. Carryover additives from sub-ingredients. If a chemical was used upstream and its concentration in your finished product falls below a certain threshold, it becomes legally invisible. Then there's natural flavors. 2 words that appear on ingredient lists with such frequency, they've become almost meaningless. The FDA defines natural flavors as flavoring substances derived from plant or animal material. That definition is wide enough to contain thousands of distinct chemical compounds from hundreds of sources, all collapsed into 2 words. You do not know what the natural flavor in your product is. You are not entitled to know. The company considers it proprietary. Trans fats were legally allowed to be listed as 0 grams per serving as long as the amount per serving was below 0.5 grams. The loophole was to make the serving size small enough to keep the per serving count under the threshold. Mathematically, a product with multiple servings could contain multiple grams of trans fat while displaying a label that said 0. This practice was widespread for years before partial regulation closed it. Partially. You read the label. You read the part of the label that existed. The rest of it was filed under trade secrets, exemptions, and thresholds decided by people who do not eat what you eat. Number 1. You have almost no control, and that's the most disturbing truth. Everything on this list, the bug parts, the old apples, the microplastics, the engineered bliss points, the invisible additives, the hunger signals your brain misreads, the flavors your eyes invented before your tongue got involved, all of it points to the same uncomfortable conclusion. You do not control your relationship with food as much as you believe you do. You control the shopping cart, technically. You control which restaurant you open on your phone. But the architecture of your choices, what you crave, what tastes good, what feels fresh, what you think is safe when you feel hungry, how much you enjoy it, that architecture was built by your evolutionary history, your childhood memories, your stress hormones, a team of flavor chemists in a windowless lab, a produce storage engineer, a marketing director who chose the plate color, and a lobbyist who negotiated the labeling exemption. The psychological term is choice architecture. The idea that decisions are not made in a vacuum, but are shaped profoundly by the environment around them. And your food environment was not designed for your health or your awareness. It was designed for your continued participation. You were always going to buy something. The question was just which something, and a great deal of money and research has gone into answering that question before you even walk through the door. None of this means you should stop eating. Obviously, it means the story you tell yourself about your food, that it's fresh, that you know what's in it, that you chose it freely because you wanted it, is a more collaborative fiction than it appears. You are a rational agent operating inside a system that has studied your irrationality for decades and priced it accordingly. The apple was always 1 year old. The chocolate always had the bugs. The hunger was always partly a clock. And somehow you're going to be hungry again in a few hours. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.